Hi guys, we're going to keep going with our solving and graphing absolute value inequalities. So this is the last one that's going to be just on inequalities, and then we're going to move to kind of putting the equations and the inequalities together. So I'm going to start by filling in the center here, and then just like we've done before, I'm going to solve and then graph, and then solve and then graph as we go around, just to ensure that we have enough room for all of that. So if we go to the center part here, we're going to do solving and graphing. Absolute value inequalities. Part 3. Now we're going to do two examples that we are going to solve and graph, and we're going to go a little bit more complex on these so we can make sure you're kind of ready for that. So on the first one, I'm going to do this A, and then I'm going to mark this as solve. And you have 8 plus the absolute value of 4v minus 7 is greater than or equal to 17. So this is set up in a pretty good way as far as absolute value is right here. Only thing on that side that I need to get rid of is this part right here. So if that is a positive 8, I'm going to subtract 8 from both sides to get the absolute value alone. So it's going to be the absolute value of 4v minus 7 is greater than or equal to 9. Now I can tell that my absolute value on this side is by itself. So now I can do my two branches. So for the first branch, I'm going to write it exactly the way it is, but I'm going to drop the absolute value sign. So I did everything that was here, I just dropped these. Now the second time through, I need to flip this inequality, and I need to change this 9 to a negative 9. So 4v minus 7, it's going to be less than or equal to, and then negative 9. And now I have a little bit of solving to do to kind of get this by itself. So we'll start on this one right here. So the opposite of subtracting 7 is adding 7. So I have 4v is greater than or equal to 16. And then to get rid of the 4, I would divide both sides by 4. So I have v is greater than or equal to 4. Now, I don't know if you've noticed, but I have kind of changed variables around a little bit. I don't want you to think it's always got to be x. I mean, a lot of times people use x because it's the most common one and they're just comfortable with it. But remember, it can be variables. Any letter is okay. Okay, now we're going to continue on the other side. So we'll start with getting rid of this 7, just like the other side. So add 7. So 4v is less than or equal to, and negative 9 plus 7 is negative 2. And then to get rid of the 4, I'm going to divide both sides by 4. Now, I will tell you, this isn't going to come out as a whole number, but you might want to put that in Desmos and see what happens. So negative 2 over 4, and hit that little fraction bar in the front, it reduces down to negative 1/2. Okay, now, before I move over to the next one to graph, remember, I'm going to take this part with me. So I'm going to go to the next one and mark it A and then graph. And then here are my two inequalities. V is greater than or equal to 4, or V is less than or equal to -1/2. And those are the ones I'm going to graph. So when I look at my number line, I know I've got to get -1/2 and 4 on there. If you want to put more numbers than that, that's perfectly fine. But you have to at least have that. So on both of these, I can tell they're going to be filled in, or closed circles, as some people call them. So on the first one, I'm going to have a closed circle at 4. And since the variable goes first, the line's going to go in that direction, which means it's going to go this way. Okay, and the other one, it's going to be a closed circle at -1/2. But since the letter's first, my line's going to go this way. So I'm going to put a dot there, and then my line's going to go that way. Okay, so that's A. So let's go to our second example that we're going to do for B. So I'm going to move to my next circle. It's going to be B. I'm going to do solve here. And I have the absolute value of 3 plus R over 7 is less than or equal to 5. So I'm giving you really a different one here. We haven't seen one that's had like a fractional part here. And this 7 is not part of the absolute value. I want you to be aware of that too. So before I can even start thinking about this absolute value, I got to get rid of the 7. So this is like divided by 7. So the opposite of dividing by 7 would be multiplying by 7. So I have the absolute value of 3 plus R is less than or equal to 35. Now, since the absolute value is now by itself on one side, we can start to do our branches. So the first time through, we write it just the way it is, just without the absolute value bars. Now the second time through, I'm going to flip this inequality and flip this 35 to a -35. So 3 plus R is greater than or equal to -35. And really, we only have a little bit of solving here. So to get the R by itself, I've got to get rid of this 3. And I assume that that 3 is a positive 3. So to get rid of it, I'm going to subtract 3 from both sides. So R is less than or equal to 32. Let me adjust this line a little bit. Now the same thing's going to be true over here. To get rid of that 3, because it's a positive 3, I'm going to subtract 3. -35 minus 3 is -38. So I have that part of that answer. Now I am going to take this part with me to the next box so I can graph it. But I do want to make sure that you're noticing the steps that I took on this side are pretty much the steps I'm taking on the other side. So realize that you are going to see some mirroring of skills like we talked about earlier. Okay, so I'm going to take this to the next one. So I have B, and I'm going to graph. and I have r is less than or equal to 32, or r is greater than or equal to negative 38. So the two numbers they care about are negative 38 and positive 32. I know these are both going to be filled in circles because they both have that equal to part with the inequality. So for 32, I'm going to put a closed circle. The line's going to go this direction because the letter's first. So closed circle, it's going to go this way. Now, I do notice that because this goes by the other number here, there's probably going to be some overlapping. So when I go to this second one here, I'm going to draw that one underneath. So I have a closed circle at 38 because the variable's first. This points the way the line's going to go, so it's going to go that way. Now, because this kind of looks like they share part of the graph, you can see that both of these really have this part of the graph in common. So we have to bring up this negative 33 as a closed circle. Bring 32 down here. This part of the line is what they share in common. That's actually where your answer is. So when you're looking at these, it takes both of these to figure out they share this in common. The part I've done in blue here, that's going to be the only part you see in a test or a quiz. Now, you're going to have to make the graph yourself to see these pieces, to know that they overlap to see this. But typically when you see circles either opened or closed at the end, whatever it is, and this part here, that's happened because a line has, two lines have overlapped each other. Okay, next time we're going to pull all the equations and inequality stuff together.